Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. If you're new to the channel, this is an edgier take on ttrpgs, so we definitely like horror and spooky things. This week, we are jumping into our continuation of the Nine Hells. We are talking about the layer of Dis. We're talking about Dispater. Before we start talking about Dispater, we're going to talk about the layer of the Nine Hells that he rules, the layer of Dis. He is ruler of the second layer, and it is named after his name. Now, on the outskirts of Dis, which were interspersed with rolling hills and plagued by hellcats, wild Irins, and supposedly moving pillars of stone. The majority of Dis, however, was a flat, blasted plain with the occasional rises in the ground, or precipitous mountains filled with iron ore that created a maze of canyons between them. Iron bastions on rocky pinnacles filled with garrisons watch over the canyons, and the iron roads paved within them. Cloudless skies were a thick gray-green, sometimes illuminated by flickers of lightning and the faint echoes of thunder, and were plagued by unending winds that fiercely and unpredictably hurled earthbound travelers through the air and made flying an ordeal for those that hadn't spent years learning its patterns. Dis shared its name both with its master and the city that comprised most of it, the largest and most well-known domain in Hell, otherwise known as the Iron City or the City of Pain. It was speculated that the layer and city were actually one and the same, since the Iron City seemingly infinite in size from the inside. Now the Iron City, like it says, it encompasses most of the layer of Dis. Everything is built and connected within this area. And that's why when you're inside of it, it looks massive. Now the Iron City, the labyrinth nature of the Iron City was partially a result of endless construction work forced upon the petitioners, work crews of shades that had been returned their memories in order to properly appreciate their agony. Lemurs on the other forms of petitioners were watched over by perched abishai and guided from Spinagon foremen. In extension, contraction, remodeling, reconstruction, and repair of the city, much of which was considered to be meaningless busy work. Now, what this really all means, I know I threw a whole bunch of words out there that made no sense to anyone, but lemurs, abishai, and spinagon are all different types of devils, and they kind of just forcibly made these shades, which is another type of spiritual entity, into doing this work. So basically, people that were sent to the layer of Dis were forced to do manual labor, and it was considered to be meaningless work because it seemed like it was just punishment. Just for being there, you had to be put to work, and the only thing they made you do was help build out the Iron City and pave the roads and such. It was said that the reason the City of Pain changed so quickly, both supernaturally and in the form of work crew orders, was that it reflected the inner workings of Dispater's mind. Despite being theoretically infinite, those inside always felt cramped and trapped, and more paranoid Dispater was, the tighter and more Warren-like the city streets became. With the overwhelming presence of recently added scrying devices, the walls had ears, and eyes of statues moved. Dispater ruled the city from his iron tower, a massive structure with even faster acting peculiarities than the rest of the city. It always seemed to be a block away, yet moving towards it got one nowhere. The tower itself could be seen from every point in Dis, and from it Dispater could see the tiniest details of his domain, but it always changed from moment to moment. Now this is a lot like the labyrinth from the movie Labyrinth. I don't know if you ever saw it. I watched it as a kid. I love that movie. But this really reflects that. It's constantly changing. It only reflects its purposes to benefit Dispater, or the ruler of it. While thoroughly unpleasant, the focus of Dis was industry rather than military, and it was one of the most accommodating place in the Nine Hells towards outsiders. Most outside dealings were conducted in an area known as the Fetters, so called because the outsiders found themselves there could no longer seem to leave. Rare information was granted to the highest bidder. Decent food and taverns mimicking those of the prime material plane formed a tourist economy, and the bazaars and the foundries bought and sold arms, armor, artistry, magical items, and infernal mercenaries. While thief gangs and crime lords fought over the control of the sprawling slums, Dispater still ultimately controlled it through his spies and informants. Though special provisions added to contracts made in Dis, he appropriated a portion of every shady deal and contraband trade, whether it was made with devils, night hags, rakasha, succubi, or other fiends. So, when you get to kind of get an understanding of what Dispater is, it's kind of like an economic center of all of the 9 hells. This is where you go to make money, make deals, change favors, buy things, sell things, curry favor. That is all kind of done here, with Dispater taking a percentage of everything that's done. Now, before we get into the man himself, I just want to take a moment and say a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. Love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and helping us do what we love to do. If you want to be a Patreon supporter or support us directly, the link is in the description, as well as a link to our good friends at Critical Failures, who are part of the live stream game, and the links to our live stream World of Warcraft channel. With that out of the way, let's jump back into the video. Dispater appeared as a 7-foot-tall, dark-haired humanoid with sable skin as cold and hard as iron. His infernal heritage was revealed in several aspects of his figure: his glowing red eyes, small horns, pointed tail, and cloven left hoof. The devilishly handsome Archduke dressed in only the finest attire, such as his red robes or velvet gloves, and he always wielded his mace-like rod. Now, I find that the devils that tend to be focused on certain things like knowledge and scheming and cunning, like straightforward, tend to look more like devils. And the other devil, like the archdukes, all who have other things going on predominantly, don't look like devils, like Mammon and Beelzebub and Levistus. They all have very different appearances to them than traditional, like, you know, horns and hooves and tails. Now, Dispater, his personality was that of a master strategist and expert in intrigue. Dispater had well earned his reputation for being the most carefully calculating of the archdevils. His personal safety was always his top priority, and to catch him off guard would be to outwit one of the most clever and resourceful beings in reality. During every step of his dominion, he acted with patience, cunning, and unshakable discretion. Although he, like the other archdevils, schemed to take over the 9 hells, he avoided taking big risks not out of cowardice or insecurity, but because of his unique view of the system. Dispater viewed reality from the perspective of a constant and enigmatic game, governed by unclear rules, and he analyzed the worth of everything by how it might help him glean its true nature. By solving all the mysteries of the multiverse, he would gain the best chances of winning, allowing him to control the 9 hells and then the rest of reality. He held numerous secret techniques in regards to mining and forging, for example, making him the greatest weapons supplier in hell and possibly the multiverse, thus making him an important figure to the devils of war-torn Avernus. The chance to learn a new secret was one of the few things that could compel him to act against other archdevils. So understand that he kind of really made a great niche for himself by being like the master of arms, really, in the 9 hells, because of the blood war and the constant amount of beings that die on the devil side of it that cause new weapons to be needed and things like that. So he really made himself into a profitable situation by being the guy to turn to for that stuff. Despite his analytically approach, Dispater still held diabolical charisma and carried himself with appreciable self-control. He was calm and composed at all times and was undeniably persuasive, delivering reasonable arguments with the courtesy of a true gentleman. His ability to withhold anger, even when it passionately burned within him, made him a dangerously suave being and was a source of personal pride for him. So this is like that. Like when devils act like devils, this is really what it is. Always being kind and courteous, always offering a reasonable reason to do anything that they wanted, and kind of just pouring that poison into your ear, subtly, charismatically, and never lashing out. That is a devil through history that you've definitely heard about in like every facet in which devils appear. which is why it really fits him that he has this really devilish appearance. However, behind Dispater's sophisticated posturing and soft finery was nonetheless a tyrant's iron fist. Much to the chagrin of predatory members of his court, he was a malicious manipulator, whose gentle words were laced with deceit, and his acts of supposed charity were always political in nature. Among the archdevils, he was notable for rarely trying to force others to do his bidding, preferring to twist them into unwittingly carrying out his will. Even when committing acts of unspeakable evil, his chivalrous facade never wavered, and if someone did manage to break his ironclad stoicism, he'd sooner destroy them than leave them alive to potentially expose his folly. Now, Dispater has a great quote that's, "To witness the greatest evil you will ever face, you need only look into a mirror." I love that, because it's not so much showing you that he is the greatest evil, that he's this horrible person, but in a gentle way showing you that you're this horrible person, and kind of like making you understand things from a different perspective, putting that thought into your mind that you are the greatest evil. And I love that. More recently, however, a flaw had appeared in Dispater's seemingly invincible defense. His never-ending vigilance had slowly transitioning into anxiety and paranoia. Unless otherwise forced to, he never left the city or even his tower, fearing a fate like Grayon or Moloch before him. They were all destroyed and their power was taken from them. I don't think they were killed necessarily, but they lost the power of being an archduke. No one was trusted. Surprises were, at best, unpleasant. And when he went out of his way to make clear who was in charge, the gloomy archdevil's paranoia affected his every action. Even the cautious Lord of the Nine had at least 9 escape routes and backup plans at any given time. So, Dispater has grown paranoid for as long as he's been out there. Now, keep in mind, there are devils that are out there that are definitely trying to get Dispater. They definitely want him taken care of. And this we'll talk about when we talk about the war between, like kind of like the civil war of the Nine Hells. But he has enemies, and devils aren't really opposed to destroying each other. And that's something that Asmodeus kind of does purposely. Now, one of the most important things about Dispater is during the Reckoning of Hell, which is, again, that Nine Hells civil war that we'll talk about, him and Beelzebub have a long-standing hatred for each other, because they both do things very similarly. They both rely on spies and lies and deception to kind of get what they want. So after the Reckoning, that's what brought about this insane paranoia, because a lot of things changed and a lot of people almost died. So Dispater started becoming really, really paranoid. In that regard, that's when he started to lock himself in his iron tower. That's why he very rarely leaves unless Asmodeus demands that he does. Everything he's done is done through like emissaries and people he appoints to deliver messages for him. I bet some of these messages and some of these people abuse that power, undoubtedly. But one of his main goals is to eliminate Beelzebub. And Beelzebub being one of my favorites, I take that personally. But understand, having a powerful enemy like Beelzebub, specifically him, does kind of tie you into one side of everything. Beelzebub is a force to be reckoned with, absolutely. And seeing what happens when you lose control of an additional layer of the Nine Hells, it does diminish your power, and things like that cause Dispater to go kind of paranoid. He doesn't want to see that happen to himself, because even though he technically won in the Reckoning, not that he personally did anything to deliver that victory, but he was on the winning side. He got to see what happens if you lose. And in that regard, that paranoia is kind of what festered in it. That is Dispater, another one that's kind of conscried within this fear and paranoia and building an iron city and drawing himself to being a tyrant. When we get into the reckoning, things are definitely going to get a lot more clearer as to kind of like what happened and some of the activities that kind of occur normally within the Nine Hells. But if you liked what you saw, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. Definitely let us know if Dispater is one of your favorites, why you like him, why the layer of Dis is cool, or what you think about it. A big thank you to my Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. A big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failures. We're part of a live stream game on Wednesday nights. And check us out on our World of Warcraft channel. The links to all of those, and again, our Patreon support link is in the description. And thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.